Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of Film Base.
Yes, we're back again with more film content.
We are here from Logan's dad's Tiki Room. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
This was a disaster storage room for many years, and now in my father's increasingly eccentric retirement, he is turning it into a tiki bar, which I'm perfectly happy with.
So obviously you had to shoot, and this is Logan's birthday edition, so this episode will be coming out on Logan's birthday, so make sure to put your happy birthday comments. I think that YouTube now, you can set it ahead of time to post on a certain date.
Yeah, but that assumes I have time to edit it when I leave for my trip, which I'm going on vacation.
Happy New Year's episode of Film Base. Anyway, we are here to tell you about...
Well, we wanted to talk about the film distribution company A24, and they put out a lot of really good films.
So a lot of them.
We would do our top 4 favorite films from them. I wanted to do all of them in a ranking, but Allison doesn't have the stamina.
I do. You just will never watch that.
We're going to do top 4 each. And we're going to focus on horror films, I think, because I haven't seen that many A24 films that are not horror films.
At the very end, I'll give an honorable mention to my favorite non-horror A24
Does The Green Knight count?
As a horror film?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I love it, though.
I thought it was good, too.
All right, well, let's get started.
You want to start first, or shall I?
You start.
All right. I'm going to start with my number 1 pick, and we'll count down, because I think it will be more interesting that way. My number 1 pick for A24 horror films is The Witch, directed by Robert Eggers. It's probably my favorite horror film of the last 20 years. I think everything about it is great. It's long on atmosphere. There's so much attention to historical detail. The dialogue is all period. All the props and the construction, the set design is all period. It's just great. It really captures that kind of horror story that I like, which is sort of a folk tale. It's this kind of ambiguous, what's going on? Is there really a witch, or is it something more natural? It's out in the middle of the woods, nowhere. There's this kind of religious puritanism angle to it, which is always fun. And then it was like the first movie by Anya Taylor-Joy, and she's become one of my favorite actresses.
Oh, she's great.
She's great in everything, and it's just a beautiful film. And I think it's one of the most exciting and interesting horror films in a long time, and it's like it really kicked off that elevated horror thing. I think
it has.
It has. First one.
That's my number 2 pick. Okay. So I'll talk about it as well. Yes. One of my favorite parts is Black Phillip.
Yeah.
And you and I will sometimes send a photo of Black Phillip to one another with very little context, if any.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
But the problem is I accidentally sent Black Phillip completely out of context to a couple of people. Dramatically inappropriately bad context. So that always makes me think of that. But the Black Phillip part, and it's a goat, that is one of the strongest visuals in that film to me.
Just say goat again for the people.
What?
Just say the word goat again.
Goat.
There we go. Thank you.
He's trying to get my goat. All right, should I go on to my number 1
do
pick?
your number 1, since you already said your number 2.
So my number 1, and again, I agree, elevated horror, and that's Hereditary, starring the amazing Toni Collette. I was actually quite upset that she did not get an Oscar nomination for this role. She turns in a tour de force performance as the mother in this family who has undergone a loss of the grandmother. The Academy looks very unfavorably towards comedies and horror films and musicals, and sometimes you will see nominations and wins, and she did not even get a nomination that year, which I think is tragic, honestly. This film talks about generational trauma, mental illness, in such a way that I think it's relatable, but then it turns that very relatable generational trauma, mental illness into such horror that the visuals from it are striking, and most of the film is not super scary. There are some striking visuals, if you know what I mean, but towards the last 8 minutes or so are terrifying.
Yeah, actually, Hereditary is my number 2 pick, so we're very much on the same page here.
This is why we're best
I think
friends.
We're going to diverge in 3 and 4. But,
we'll see.
I think Hereditary, I like it a little bit better than Midsommar. I think the performances are all incredible in it, and it has such a misdirect. If you've only seen the trailer, where you think the movie's going and where it actually goes are completely different, and that's really cool. And there's just some genuinely horrific scenes in this movie. There's things that you know, and they hit you different at different ages, I think. But I don't want to spoil anything, but there's one scene in particular I'm thinking of where it's just completely horrifying, and it happens off camera. You just hear voices in the background.
Yes.
And it's just like, it's great. And then the very end, as you said, is, again, you don't really see it coming. It sort of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's a terrifying film. I think it's really, really good. And so, what is it, the first film by Ari Aster?
It is. Then we had Midsummer, and then we had Beau is Afraid. And something that runs through all three of these films is a current of a similarity in Ari Aster's horror films is head trauma.
Yeah. Well, you can't go wrong with a little head trauma. It's great.
All right. So now we're on to our number 3 picks.
Okay. Shall I go?
You go.
All right. My number 3 pick, and I had to think about this because there's about 8 A24 horror films that I wanted to talk about because there's so many good ones. But I'm picking the film Men for my number 3 pick.
Okay.
Which I have a little bit mixed feelings about, but I love so much of it that I ended up buying it on Blu-ray and watching it multiple times. It stars Jessie Buckley, and she has had a traumatic, we'll say breakup, although it's more complicated than that, of her relationship, and she needs to get away, and she goes out to the English countryside to rent a house kind of like on the border of Wales, and it's just like beautiful rural England. It's like this movie was tailor-made for my preferences in horror. It's very like folk horror, very rural, very English. Jessie Buckley's a great actress.
Yes.
I really like her and everything. And I forget the male lead's in it, but he plays multiple roles, and I think he's very good as well.
Did you know that it was the same man over and over? I don't have facial blindness, but I could not tell.
I have close to facial blindness, I think, because I'm very bad at that too, but I did know. But yeah, there's just so many creepy things that go on. They have this like, green man forest figure who appears out of nowhere and kind of stalks her a little bit. It's really unsettling and really creepy. Yeah. My only issue with the film is I kind of dislike its kind of toxic masculinity message that it has at the end. I think it's a little ham-fisted and over the head. Oh, it hits you over the head. But the first half of the movie is so beautiful and hits all my buttons of the things that I look for in a horror movie that I had to put it as number 3.
Yeah, she is really great. So my number 3 is not going to be on your list today.
Okay.
And that's because you fell asleep during it. It is Talk to Me, which is a New Zealand offering. I am really into Kiwi cinema.
Yeah. And
it is the story of these high schoolers who find this cursed hand. And it's preserved, you would say, right?
Yeah.
And if you hold the hand, like, can we demo? If you hold the hand like this, then it's almost like a seance. You can commune with that person, whatever person. It's kind of like a Ouija board, whoever decides to answer the call. And they time it because it'll like take over or possess the person who's interacting with the hand, and so they time it. And of course, it reminds me of Flatliners, how they get closer and closer to the line, and reality starts kind of blurring with this other world as they're the portal between the living and the dead becomes thinner. And I loved it. I think that the Kiwi film industry is really grown a lot in the last 10-ish years.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredible. I thought it was very spooky. You cared about a lot of the characters, which is important, and that's not always common in a horror film. So I hope that you will give it another shot one day.
I went to go see it in the theater, and I found it very slow to get going, and I had 7 beers before I went to the theater, so I quickly conked out of it, but it didn't grab my interest.
I've never had 7 beers.
But yeah, I understand. A lot of people like that film. It's very good. What's your number 4?
I want to hear your number 4. Did you do your number 3?
Yeah, I did my number 3. Okay. It was Men.
All right, we're going to say our number 4 at the same time.
It's going to be different.
3, 2, 1.
Tusk.
Bodies. It was different. Okay,
yeah.
So Tusk is
bodies. Interesting.
Tusk is based upon the horror version of the Fleetwood Mac song Tusk.
Yeah.
Please take it away.
Tusk is a Kevin Smith film that is very polarizing and divisive, and I see it at the very bottom of most people's lists of A24 films because people hate it, and I understand why people hate it because it's extremely disturbing and messed up. But it is really funny if you approach it with the right frame of mind. It's, done by Kevin Smith, so he's a comedy guy. It's got Justin Long in it. It's got Johnny Depp in it. It's got like all these weird people that you wouldn't expect to be in it. Michael Parks, I think, is in it. And it's basically about a walrus. I don't want to say anything more about it. You have to see it. It's got Haley Joel Osment in it too. But it's
great.
It's basically extremely disturbing body horror but it's done in such an over-the-top way that it ends up being funny. And it tickled me. I found it really entertaining. It definitely sticks with you. It's a movie you will not forget once you see it. So, I enjoy it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. Tell me about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
I thought it was a lot of fun in that traditional kind of horror film of who is slowly picking somebody off in a manor house, right?
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of backstory about the game Bodies, 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 which has been called many other things. So these friends have gathered together for a birthday weekend for one of the participants, and one of the people who's arrived has been estranged from pretty much the entire group for I think the last year.
Yeah.
So you already have some tensions that are building from the get-go as she arrives. Also, one of the girls has a boyfriend that's a little bit older that nobody really knows. What's his backstory? Is he who he says he is? And then there's a body, and then everyone really starts to just become unhinged. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It wasn't overly gory, which I like.
Yeah.
I like the plot to drive the dread and the suspense and the scares, not just body horror. That's not really my thing. So I enjoyed it as something that's very fun. What is your number 4?
I already told you my number 4.
Okay.
We talked about Tusk.
Tusk, I want to
You're
tell
not
you...
keeping up today.
I know. Sorry.
Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I saw that in theaters as well. And my problem with it is I feel like it was going for like parody of obnoxious millennials.
Yes.
And I found the parody so realistic that it was just annoying to me and obnoxious rather than funny. So I struggled enjoying the characters, and I sort of just wanted them to all die so that I could be rid of them.
And we say this as extreme elder millennials.
Yeah.
We are your ancient elder millennials.
That's true.
Yes.
I call myself Gen X.
Me too.
I believe
actually.
I'm Gen X. So,
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I found the characters so annoying that I had a hard time enjoying the film for that reason.
Did you have a cell phone in high school?
Not in high school. I think I got one when I
me
went to
neither.
college.
I didn't have a computer until I was in college.
Yeah.
I did want to talk briefly about an honorable mention. It is not a horror film, but if you have not seen Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, it is a delight. It is one of the maybe 3 times I've seen my husband cry. One of those was the 2019 Little Women. The 3rd time was Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. It's super cute. You can watch it with your kids. It's heartwarming, but there's definitely stakes. Like, you get really invested in what happens to Marcel's life.
Yeah, and you should also see Saint Maud and the Black Coat's Daughter, because those are good too.
All right, well, that about wraps it up here on our birthday episode of Film Bouillabaisse.
Birthday/New Year's episode.
Wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a joyous New Year.
And
Season.
a festive winter solstice.
Absolutely.